Today, what we are going to discuss is what's happening in the Gaza Strip since Saturday, the 7th of October 2023. It's absolutely tragic, unbelievable, unprecedented, the word which has been often used to describe what has been happening. For a simple reason, because in the last 75 years since Israel has been in existence, never has something like this ever happened, which has resulted in the death of close to 1,000 Israelis on Israeli soil on any given single day. So, what makes this entire episode a completely different one as compared to what has happened in the past is the loss of life, the unbelievable, phenomenal loss of life. Most lives that have been lost in a situation wherein they least anticipated that this is something that could happen to them. The reason for this loss of life is this unprecedented sort of invasion of Israeli territory out of the Gaza Strip that has been perpetrated by Hamas. Hamas fighters streamed out of the Gaza Strip, which is a small piece of territory, almost 25 kilometers by 10 kilometers. So it's 25 kilometers long, 10 kilometers wide. Almost, if one tries looking for it on a map of the world, it looks like sort of quadrilateral. And out of this, you have fighters streaming out, fully armed, well prepared. Seems like months of training and months of groundwork has gone into deciding as to what exactly needs to be done, and when it actually would be done, what is the way by which it would be done. So everything seems to be in place if one looks at the propaganda videos that Hamas has released. It seems that they were well prepared for this sort of an episode. So they stream out of the Gaza Strip and they take recourse to Israeli territory by land, by air, and by sea. And there they go about butchering Israeli citizens in a situation wherein most least anticipated something like this to happen to them. So they move on into the towns, in the villages, in the settlements around the Gaza Strip, in southern Israel, and you have settlements and villages being invaded where they are moving in and they're trying to shoot down people, mayhem, absolute mayhem all over the place. Approximately 1,000 Israelis have been killed. 150 of them have been apprehended, and Hamas workers have taken them back to the Gaza Strip and have possibly taken them deep into the ground, below the ground, wherein now they are being held hostage. And it's this hostage thing that adds a completely different dimension to this entire conflict. Because just as you've never had in the past 1,000 Israelis being killed on Israeli soil on any given single day, you never had again in the past something like this happening wherein Israeli citizens apprehended on Israeli soil, carted away to a Palestinian territory, have been held hostage on such vast numbers. They are all sorts of Israelis. They are men, they are women, they are children, they are the old, they are the young, they are soldiers, they are professionals, they have all sorts of backgrounds. And this makes the entire thing more tricky in terms of what needs to be done militarily in the Gaza region. Sort of gets hedged by the fact that Hamas is holding on to 150 Israelis. There is one section in the Israeli cabinet and the Israeli Defense Forces which is like very clear that we shouldn't be a lot bothered about the hostages, because that would automatically in some way or the other tone down the response that Israel needs to deliver. We should not be worried if there is more loss of life as far as Israelis are concerned, and we should move in and deliver Hamas a body blow of the sort that would see to it that the organization would never ever rise up to doing something like this ever again. Obviously, the questions are why this, why now, why something like this. There are a lot of people who are comparing this in Israel to and outside Israel to something like Israel's 9/11 moment. There is the obvious comparison which has been made to the Yom Kippur War for a very simple reason, because October 2023 happens to be the 50th anniversary month of the Yom Kippur War. Almost 24-hour gap is what separates the start of the Yom Kippur War and this incidents that has been perpetrated in the regions of South Israel by Hamas. So there's an obvious sort of way by which people try making comparisons, irrespective of the fact that the Yom Kippur War was a conflict between nation states, independent nation states, and did not involve a nation state on one hand and a non-state actor on the other hand, which this episode is. So sort of this makes things slightly different. Again, as far as 9/11 is concerned, the sheer brazenness, the sheer unpredictability is obviously what one recalls when one looks at this episode and when one tries to make sense of 9/11, except for the fact that the people who came to the United States to perpetrate 9/11 were not people who were streaming from a nearby territory. They came a vast distance, almost from across the oceans, and settled in the United States for some period of time before they perpetrated that attack. So obviously, just as there sound to be similarities, there are obvious dissimilarities between the two episodes. But then, as someone in the Jerusalem Post sort of recently tried to make a point, it seems that there's another episode that happened 80 years ago, which bears an uncanny resemblance to this one, and that's the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. So what happened in Israel on the 7th of October 2023 sounds very similar to the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. So Poland falls to the Nazis in 1939 in the month of September. Jews from across Poland sort of have been forced into ghettos as far as the big cities are concerned. So every Polish city has its big ghettos. The ghettos are mostly walled, they have barbed fences, and within it there is a Jewish communal life that flourishes. Jews cannot leave the ghettos or get into the ghettos without the explicit permission of the Nazis, who are manning and who are policing all the entry and exit points into the ghetto. Jews are subjected to indignities, to starvation, to all sorts of humiliation, all sorts of acts by which you can perpetrate all manner of atrocities against them. They routinely get killed in what seems to be is some sort of Nazi way of passing your time when you're policing the ghettos. So for minor infractions, heavy punishments are inflicted. And all in all, life is unbearable as far as the Jews in the ghettos are concerned. And then there comes 1943, when the Jews in the Warsaw Ghetto attempt an uprising. So they break through the walls, they manage to bring in weapons, and they manage to storm some of these security installations outside the ghetto, which are manned by the Nazis. Of course, the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising is badly sort of extinguished by the Nazis. It's completely eliminated. And then what is perpetrated against the Jews is an unbelievable violence, the likes of which can only be described as epic. So for a lot of people in Israel who know their history well and who know the history of what happened to the Jewish people well, this moment sort of is a resemblance to that. 2005 is when Hamas wins the Palestinian National Council elections, the Palestinian Legislative Council elections. There have been no elections which have been conducted since then. And you have this division between the West Bank and the Gaza. The Palestinians, Hamas wins the elections, and Hamas manages to drive out the officials and the fighters of the Fatah faction of the PLO out of Gaza, and thereby monopolizes all power in the Gaza Strip. 2006, the Ariel Sharon government decides to disband Gaza and to walk away from it. Jewish settlements are disbanded. Almost 4 synagogues are systematically sort of brought down with this idea that all traces of Jewish life in the Gaza Strip have got to come to an end because the Israeli state is withdrawing from Gaza. So the Israeli state withdraws from Gaza, maintains its existence as far as the 7 entry points are concerned, through which goods and stuff can move in Gaza from Israel, and then maintain a very close sort of watch over Gaza's airspace, over Gaza's coastline, effectively for most Palestinians, turning Gaza into an open-air prison, which is home to almost 23 lakh Palestinians, 2.3 million Palestinians. And life goes on. They are subjected to indignities, they are subjected to inhumanity, they are subjected to all manner of atrocities. 2023, the year is not yet out, and in the West Bank, Israel has already managed to finish off something like 275 Palestinians. In Gaza, Palestinians are routinely harassed, are absolutely on almost normal basis subjected to all sorts of indignity and humiliation that Israel can subject them to. And since December 2022, when this new government has come into power, which carries as members of this coalition Israel's most extreme right-wing parties, the fate of the Palestinians has become much more difficult. So as the Hamas propaganda video makes a point that, well, why did we do this? So we are trying to, in some way or the other, avenge for the indignities and the humiliations perpetrated against us and our people. And we are trying to, in some way or the other, protest against what Israelis are trying to do with the Al-Aqsa Masjid. Masjid al-Haram, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, is at the center, at almost the center of all sorts of Palestinian identity, in terms of who are the Palestinian people, in terms of their spirituality, their beliefs. Absolutely stunning mosque located in absolutely wonderful corner of Jerusalem, with legacy and a history that goes all the way to the 7th century of the Common Era. It's not just a shrine, it's a completely different sort of place for most Palestinians. And what has been happening with most Israelis over the last couple of years has been a deliberate effort being made to sort of change the character of this place itself, to try emphasizing that, well, much before the mosque came into existence, it was a site of Jewish worship. It was a part of the temple which was destroyed by the Roman emperors. It was a place which was holy to the Jewish people, and hence its Jewish character should be restored. This despite the fact that most Orthodox Jews refuse to legitimately sanction a change in character as far as this place itself is concerned. So for most of them, it is a mosque, it is a place of worship of a different religion, and one should be patient enough to let God have his own way. That's at least how a lot of Orthodox Jews look at it. And a lot of nationalist Jews of a certain fanatic bent of mind, of the type that form Israel's government as of now, are hell-bent on using the mosque as a very effective way of provoking Palestinians, and thereby making that the reason for further indignities and humiliations to be heaped on them. So, sort of, this is reminiscent of what the Warsaw Ghetto was. We are done with this. We no longer want to take this on, and we somehow the other want to register our protest against it. It results in the death of 1,000 Israelis, most of whom, in the best of situations, would possibly have had sympathized with the Arabs, and possibly would not have had on their own been reason for any provocation against them at their own individual levels. That's the cost that nationalism exacts from people in terms of enforcing a national identity, and that leaves us wondering and thinking in so many different ways as to what can be the way out as far as this entire situation is concerned. Hamas started life in the prisons of Israel in the 1980s. As an organization whose coming into existence was encouraged by the Israeli armed forces as well as by the Israeli government, so that what could be done is there could be a counter to the PLO, the the Palestinian Liberation Organization, which had been spearheading the Palestinian struggle since the 1960s when it was formed, by the 1980s had turned itself into sort of the sole voice of the Palestinian people across the world. Yasser Arafat delivering that memorable speech to the United Nations General Assembly, for which the General Assembly moves from New York to Switzerland, given the fact that the Americans refused to grant him a visa for the occasion, is the sort of thing that comes to mind when one thinks about it. So the PLO establishes itself as the sole voice of the Palestinian people, and somehow or the other Israel is looking out for a way by which Israel could make a dent into it and sort of create a division between them. And along the way comes this idea that Palestinian youngsters who are jailed in Israeli jails, can they be put together in an effort to take on the PLO? So as opposed to more 20th century version or mid 20th century version of a more secular, of a more leftist sort of nationalism, Hamas emerges as a more fundamentalist, more Islamist sort of organization, which shares its kinship in terms of ideas and ideals with the Ikhwan al-Muslimin, the Muslim Brotherhood from Egypt. And is clear about this, that if at all it comes into power, it would enforce the Sharia in terms of whatever it understands to be the Sharia across territories that would be under its control. The Israeli game plan works. Over the years, Hamas systematically goes about chipping away at the legitimacy of the PLO. And once the PLO enters into the treaties that it signs with the Israeli government of the 1990s, and whose enforcement results in the establishment of the Palestinian National Authority, there's a gradual realization among Palestinians that the Oslo Accords have not delivered much on the ground as far as the lives of average and common Palestinians are concerned. And it's there that Hamas comes into the picture. So 1987 to 89 is a period in which Hamas is sort of incubated in the Israeli jails. 1994 is when the Oslo Accords are signed in Washington. 95 is when Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin is shot dead on the streets of Jerusalem. By 2000, it's clear to anyone who has eyes that the PLO has got trapped in a game of its own. And possibly Israel is not keen on what is called as a meaningful sharing of sovereignty with the Palestinians. 2003, Yasser Arafat is dead. 2005, Hamas wins the elections. 2006, Israel walks out of Gaza. From 2006 to 2023, there have been 7 episodes of a confrontation between the Israeli Defense Forces and Hamas as far as Gaza itself is concerned. The latest one being in 2021, when almost 210 Palestinians are killed, 250 Palestinians are killed over a 10-day period. That one lasted for 10 days. One doesn't know as to how long is this one supposed to go on. And then you have this one in 2023. In terms of each one of the earlier episodes, the causes of provocation were, as far as the IDF is concerned, not as spectacular as the one that has happened on the 7th of October is concerned, which is something that is completely different. There are significant voices that are sort of talking about it in hushed tones in Israeli defense as well as Israeli intelligence itself, that it does seem that something on this scale is not a routine failure of intelligence as far as the Israeli intelligence authorities are concerned. Israeli intelligence across the region is famed for being on its toes when it comes to listening carefully and understanding as to what are the Palestinians exactly up to. So it sort of seems that they have done their job well, but the information that they have ferreted on the ground, when it has made its way to the offices of the government, there seems to be some problem at that end. So to a lot of people in the Israeli intelligence community, it seems to be a matter of lapse as far as working on this intelligence is concerned at the government end, rather than at the end of the intelligence officials themselves. Most of them are clear about this, that they possibly have warned the government that something like this is afoot and something like this might happen. Most Israeli defense initiatives were targeted towards the Lansdowne organization in the Nablus region in the West Bank. So they were looking at organizations like Lansdowne that were trying to take on the PLO in the West Bank region. And so it seems that Hamas stayed much under the radar. But then they're equally clear about this, that yes, they were definitely in the know of something like this that Hamas can perpetrate. But it seems that the sort of action that was required at the government end is possibly lacking in all of this. Why? Well, it's a wild guess that anyone and everyone can make. But some of it has got to do with the fact that ever since the Netanyahu government has tried to sort of whittle down the independence of the Israeli judiciary and tried to make the judiciary almost a wing of the government, there have been massive protests and demonstrations against this in Israel itself, which have been going on for months now. The Netanyahu government hasn't budged from its position and has pursued its efforts of trying to bring the judiciary as much under its control as is possible. Has got to do with Prime Minister Netanyahu's corruption trial, and in any sort of a functioning judiciary, be it of the variety that was in existence before the Netanyahu bills were passed in the Knesset or after the bills were passed in the Knesset, all evidence is overwhelming and all evidence is compelling about the fact that if at all anything can be done in the right spirit of justice, Prime Minister Netanyahu needs to go to jail. So it's government, a battered government, headed by a bitter politician who is trying to escape imminent imprisonment and is battling unbelievable social divide on account of all of this. So for the last couple of months, Israel is a divided society. Israelis are a divided people. Out there on the streets, it's for the whole world to see that they are a divided people. They are just not able to come to terms with each other. There is bad blood. There is all sorts of insinuations. There is this strong sort of sentiment on the side of those opposing the Prime Minister that this is not just about saving the Prime Minister. This is not just about reforming the judiciary, as the Prime Minister says, but this essentially is something that is going to strike at the very roots of the state of Israel and is going to create a more fundamental question for a lot of people in Israel as to what does it mean to be a Jew. So at the end of the day, it seems that the Netanyahu government is lurching significantly to the extreme right, wherein the ultra-Orthodox would take up all sorts of positions of authority, and from those positions of authority dictate as to what does it mean to be a Jew. What's the right way of being a Jew? And that's something that most Israelis are extremely bitter about and are strongly opposed to. So Israel, till the 7th of October, represented the picture of a people and a society that was severely divided. Come 7th of October and this episode, and now what you have is a sort of cohesion that is papering over all those divides, that's pulling people close to each other, with this idea that our very survival is at stake. If something like this can happen to perfectly innocent people, just imagine as to if you let it go without a challenge, what sort of problems are you going to go ahead and face? So politicians who oppose the Prime Minister in the Knesset are now eager to become a part of a grand national unity government, which would be headed by the Prime Minister, something which is again being opposed by a lot of Israelis. So no less than a reputed paper like the Haaretz has, even as late as 3 days after the episode, columnists who are arguing for the Prime Minister's resignation. And right in the middle of this conflict, that we shouldn't delay this any further. The Netanyahu government has failed the Israelis as far as their security is concerned. And it's the right thing that can be done by Prime Minister Netanyahu is to just step down from his position now and here itself, and let somebody else head the government, and let somebody else head this initiative against Hamas. So for all the strong talk and bluster on display, there's this very strong and powerful idea that somehow or the other, the government has failed the people, and the people possibly deserve something much more better than this. How would the Israeli political dynamic play out? Well, that's anybody's guess. The divisions sort of persist even at this late hour, where United Front is being called in for all across the place, and you have people talking in so many strong voices about things, as far as both the occupied territories are concerned, as well as the state of Israel itself is concerned. Almost 250 people out of these 1,000, that's the single largest number of people who were killed at a single episode, were killed as far as the Noah Music Festival is concerned. Parting late night, early into the morning. Youngsters who are a part of a music festival on the day when the Shabbat has started, and are hence very strong moral problem as far as the ultra-orthodoxy are concerned, are the people who have lost the most lives, are the people from whom the largest number of people have been kidnapped by the Hamas fighters. So all in all, this presents a strange predicament for the state of Israel as to what needs to be done now and henceforth. 3 lakh reservists have been called into service. They have marched in accordance with their call of duty. Gaza stands besieged from all sides. And it seems that there is invasion, a land invasion, which is imminent, except for the fact that there are a sufficient number of voices within the security establishment which are equally clear about this, that a land invasion can entrap the IDF into a battle of its choice, but possibly there would be no way of easily extricating ourselves out of it. So Gaza being the sort of densely populated place that it is, approximately 6,500 people per square kilometer, there is rarely a part of the world which is as densely populated as Gaza is, whose air, whose water, whose electricity, whose fuel, whose food, whose medicine supplies have been completely stopped by the government of Israel. So Israel has stopped every single thing moving from Israel towards Gaza has been stopped. Telecommunication towers within Gaza are being demolished. at a very rapid pace, thereby seeing to it that Gazans are not in a position to upload any content which the world can take cognizance of. And the other big thing that is happening is this very imminent sort of land blockade. It's except for the Rafah crossing. On the Egyptian side, practically everything now is besieged by the Israelis. Gaza also is a very interesting territory in the sense that beneath the ground of Gaza is possibly the world's most extensive and most complicated network of tunnels that crisscrosses the entire territory, and that mostly moves towards Rafah and the Sinai, from whence Gazans derive a lot of their sustenance, stuff that they keep trading, necessities for life, medicines, food. But there are cases where the tunnels are so big that you can have vehicles stuffed with goods moving in and out. So, and that possibly is the only way by which Gazans are trying to survive as of now. The Sinai is a hotbed of the Ikhwan. The Sinai is a region which has a lot of Egyptians who are very sympathetic to the Gazans, and it seems that in any final stand between the Israelis and Hamas, this networking under the ground is something that is going to play a very pivotal role. And that's most of the hostages are possibly being held in the tunnels below Gaza. And that is the complexity that the Israeli Defense Forces are trying to, in some way or the other, navigate. Entering Gaza might be easy, but moving out of Gaza with the sense that we have accomplished most of our goals might be the most difficult part of the entire story. They have past episodes wherein they know for sure that long distance targeting of Gaza is much more easier, is much more feasible as compared to actual invasion, boots on the ground sort of an approach, which sort of complicates matters for the Israeli army, and they're just not interested in this any further. The Hamas plan is to bargain the refugees for the approximately 6,000 Palestinians being held in various Israeli prisons, and possibly use it as a bargaining chip to bring this entire conflict to a close. Hamas seems to have been blessed by the Russians as far as this part of the episode is concerned, knowing fully well that the Western Alliance, which is supporting Ukraine in its war against Russia, would now find itself further strained when it comes to supporting Israel in its struggle against Hamas. But then, of course, Russia is trying to sort of stretch Western support, Western resources all across the place, including with what they have done in the Armenian case. It seems that they are deliberately trying to provoke situations wherein Western resolve and resources would both stand as stretched in this conflict as is possible. Iran seems to have played some sort of role in this, though no one is clear as to what exactly is that all about. Iran is Hamas's immediate succor in terms of the fact that they provide them with funds, they provide them with arsenal, they provide them with necessary military training, they provide them with smart ways of communication, they provide them with the very wherewithal with which you can take on an army like the Israeli army, and at least for a reasonable period of time you can stand your ground. So knowing that, it's quite easy to bring this into the picture that, well, the Iranians are playing a role in all of this. But what role is it exactly that they've played in this one? Well, that is something that is unclear. And at least the Israelis have thrown up their hands in despair, saying that, we doubt it, but we are not able to substantiate anything as of now. So that's where things get extremely complicated and very, very interesting. The Chinese are stretched to their optimum, and possibly in this case, given the fact that they neither have bridges with the Israelis or with the Palestinians, are not much in a position to offer the same sort of help that they are offered in the Saudi-Iranian case as far as this one is concerned. And it seems that, as has been pointed out time and again by all sorts of analysts on all sides of this entire story, Israelis as well as non-Israelis, that no amount of peacemaking with the Arabs is going to help until and unless there isn't a reasonable solution to the Palestinian crisis. So you have people who have pointed this out in the past, that all sorts of Abraham Accord activities are always going to fail. They're bound to sort of flounder on this rock that is called the Palestinian question. So until and unless Israel doesn't come up with a reasonable, workable solution to the Palestinian issue, no amount of shaking hands, establishing peace, doing commerce, sending out tourists, and exchanging well-wishers between Israel and n number of Arab countries, Sudan to the United Arab Emirates, all that you can think of, is going to work until and unless you don't try resolving the Palestinian issue. Netanyahu broke free from Ariel Sharon after the Sharon government decided to withdraw the settlers and the settlements from Gaza. The Netanyahu camp believes that the Bible is absolutely right in terms of granting this piece of land to the Jewish people. And what the Jewish people, by their efforts, have got to do is to see to it that this gift of God is sort of realized on the ground by your own efforts. You have got to lay claim to every rock and piece of stone that you can. You have got to stand by it. You have got to defend your claim. And if necessary, you have got to fight for it. And for the matter of fact, even Ariel Sharon never believed in a two-state solution. And the Netanyahu government definitely doesn't believe. Benjamin Netanyahu is someone who is a man inspired by something deeply messianic, which insists on this, that no piece of Israeli territory would ever be Palestinian. So there is never going to be a Palestinian state. If Israelis stand united, there's quite a possibility that the West Bank and the Gaza Strip would be merged into Israeli territory, would become Israeli territories, and the Palestinians can be given an offer of being second-class citizens or leave to the Arab countries surrounding Israel. So that's the larger Netanyahu game plan. There can never be a Palestinian state. There never was one, and there never would be one, is what they are deeply and absolutely clear about. The one small problem is the Palestinians are not on board. So, and stay as of now where they are, a people abandoned by the whole world, a people who possibly have no one who sympathizes with them, a people whose fate almost stands sealed in the way in which it does, fighting all by themselves, just as Jews did during the Second World War, just as Jews did under the Nazis. It's just not different. One is definitely not making a claim that the Jews are a Nazi people. Definitely not. It's just that all sorts of authoritarian governments who are convinced about a certain sort of divine mandate that has been given to them, who believe in those types of old world ideas of nationalism, are bound to behave in certain ways which sound to be so similar. So there's definitely no one in their right minds would ever try making that sort of claim, or would ever try drawing that sort of line. But the reasons why one should never do it are completely different. For all the claims that the Europeans and the Americans make in terms of standing by Israel, it seems that to a certain extent they stand by Israel, they arm Israel. The Americans provide $2 billion every year in military assistance to the Israelis. 60 lakh Israelis, 60 lakh Jews who are provided with that sort of assistance. Bipartisan support. You also had Bernie Sanders people now talking in the United States that we're possibly wrong about this entire idea of the Palestinian struggle. Sad, absolute sad. So you have Europeans, you have Americans You have the white man standing behind the Jews solidly with this idea that, buddy, do what you want in this part of the world. We would always be there to support you, to condone you. But possibly the one small thing, do not ever come back to Europe. Do not ever come back to the United States. Do not settle amongst us. Stay away from us. Stay with the land that you now have. Do what you want with the Palestinian people. And we are not worried. Our consciences are just not scratched. Even if you go about killing 2-month-old toddlers, there's nothing wrong with that. But don't ever come back and become a part of who we are. There's a subtle, strong, and definite anti-Semitism that pervades every European and American government's efforts of trying to appear to be on the side of Israel. Even in this case, it seems to be so strongly but so subtly driven by a certain sense of anti-Semitism. So the very fact that Americans and Europeans, after 75 years, have not been able to resolve this matter militarily, have not been able to in some way or the other bring Israel around to the point that there is possibly never going to be a military solution to this crisis, and one doesn't need to go very further to understand as to why can there be no military solution. Jewish history is ample proof of it. You try destroying a people, you cannot. It's not possible. It can never be done. So just as the Nazis, for all the efforts that they made in this world, could not destroy the Jewish people, for all the efforts that the state of Israel is going to make with all the military assistance that it receives from the world, it is never ever going to be in a position to destroy the Palestinian people. It's a fact, plain and simple. And we have got to come around to this point. It's late, it's pretty late. 75 years is too big a period of time to let this go on and on and on in the way in which it has gone on and on and on and on. Average common Palestinians have given up on the idea that there ever would be a viable Palestinian state which would come into existence. The two-state solution for most Palestinians is an abandoned solution. It is unworkable, it's never going to be realized. All that they're looking out for is a life of equity, a life of dignity, a life of justice within whatever is now left behind. Possibly with the Jews themselves. And you just cannot do this in any other way. So all this flying all over the place in terms of trying to realize the Abraham Accords is an unworkable thing. The last chip of the block was the Britain government's efforts to bring the Israelis as close to the Saudis as is possible. Mohammed bin Salman, being the sort of shrewd person that he is, trying to play the sort of games that he is, with this idea that, well, he is ready to establish peace with the Israelis, provided the Americans are ready to give him a civil nuclear program almost on a platter. So even while dealing with the Americans about Israel and the Palestinian people, Mohammed bin Salman is trying to play the Iran game as smartly as is possible. So if the Iranians have a nuclear program, which the Americans have not been able to demolish and finish off, let the Saudis have one of their own. Israeli security analysts are pretty clear about this, that come whatever happens, Mohammed bin Salman should not get a nuclear program. For the Israelis, dealing with one nuclear state in the region, that's Iran, is enough of a trouble. Having another one close by would possibly be a disaster. So they're very clear about this. And Mohammed bin Salman is equally clear about this, that until and unless the Saudis don't get a nuclear program, well-established nuclear program, he is not going to reach to any sort of conclusion as far as the Saudi-Israeli episode of the Abraham Accords is concerned. He's not interested in it. Hamas and average Palestinians know this for sure, that if the Israeli-Saudi rapprochement becomes a reality, there are doomed people, completely doomed people. After that, there can never be any talk of Palestine. That's the way in which this struggle has evolved over the last almost 7 decades, starting off from the high point of nationalism, of Arab nationalism, under the leadership of President Nasser, way back in the 1950s. This is where the Palestinian struggle has now come this far. That you started off with Egypt, you started off with Syria, you started off with Iraq, and now it's the Saudis who hold a veto as far as the Palestinian statehood issue is concerned. And hence, for Hamas, the urgency that we have got to act. We've got to do something here and now. And that's what they go ahead and do. Unarmed, peaceful civilians who on a day of prayer and reflection have never ever anticipated their lives would be cut short and their lives would be devastated in the way in which they have been. The Israeli Defense Minister, Yoav Gallant, says that in the Gaza, what the Israeli Defense Forces are fighting against are human animals. Another sad way by which Israel tries to delegitimize the very existence of the Palestinian people. The oldest thing that any playbook of war will throw at you is to keep insisting on this, that, well, my rival, exactly speaking, is not human. So once I establish this, the Rwandan equivalent of this is the Hutus insisting on the Tutsis being nothing but cockroaches that need to be finished off. So something very similar. I deny humanity to my rivals, whereby it becomes killing them with no blemish on my conscience as easy as is possible. Would there be peace after that? Possibly never. This week also happens to be the week in which the eminent Indologist Patrick Olivelle has come out with a new biography of Emperor Ashok, who's quite the flavor of the season as far as the Indian history world is concerned. There have been studies on Ashok, there have been studies on Ashok's state, society, that have been published by academic historians and people who are historians. And Patrick Olivelle's Ashok once again sort of induces that old reflection that Emperor Ashok had almost 20 centuries ago, 23 centuries ago, that war, even the most devastating one, in which you have triumphed, possibly doesn't bring matters to a close. It resolves nothing. It destroys on scale, but it possibly is no solution to any of the problems that you have. You've got to try it differently. Thank you.